Hi, and welcome to episode 2 of myself,
And Owen.
Amazing Podcast. Once again, we are bringing you this podcast from the wonderful residence of Lake's House in room 312. So, our topic for episode 2 is the daily life at Shawnigan versus our daily life at home. Oh, yes, and how could I forget? The date this podcast is being produced is Wednesday, October 30th, 2019.
Starting at $89 a month.
Okay, so I am Owen, and I was born at the Victoria General Hospital. I then moved to Renfrew House, Shawnigan Lake, where my mom was assistant house director. And then I moved off campus where I went to school at George Bonner. And I attended there from grade 4 to 7. And then I played hockey at Carey Park, and that's where I met most of my friends. And I did that majority of my spare time. And Hayden, would you like to elaborate on what your time was like in Vancouver?
Yeah, so I moved to Vancouver with my family at the young age of 1. And my baby brother was born when I was 3. So I kind of grew up in a pretty busy area. It was kind of in between West Van and North Van. Um, and I attended preschool and met like a bunch of, it was obviously a different community than Shawnigan Lake School. Um, but throughout my childhood, I attended some strange school called the Waldorf School, which had like very different views on how learning was done. There was no technology, etc. Weird stuff. But then I eventually went to Collingwood for grade 7, so that was pretty normalized, and that was, I'd say, a big jump. It's a completely different culture going to a school like that. So that kind of opened my eyes a little bit to what the world was like. But yeah, life in Vancouver was definitely a lot different growing up than that of Shawnigan. I would often come to Shawnigan for little summer camps and hang out around here and go skiing up at Mount Washington. But yeah, when you come over to the island, it's definitely a different feel. It's not near as busy or kind of industrialized like Vancouver. Vancouver's a huge city. The traffic's messed up and all that stuff. But yeah, so in my spare time as a kid, I'd play a lot of soccer and hockey, and occasionally go skiing with my family. But yeah, just growing up in Vancouver was a lot different than I could imagine being in a small rural area like Shawnigan Lake School. Just adding on to that, in the 13 years that I've lived in Vancouver, even then there's been a lot of changes happening just with the roads and buildings going up everywhere. The city's just expanding as more and more people come in. So yeah, it's completely different than what it's like on the island here. It's a pretty little stable community that does not change much, I believe. Owen, you want to elaborate on what you've seen change over the years?
The only real change I've ever seen in Shawnigan is when there was the water pollution problem, and that was when they were taking dump trucks of contaminated soil and putting it at the top of, I believe it was Mount Baldy, not too sure, but at some mountain, and they were pouring it and contaminating the water, and that's the only real big thing I've ever seen in Shawnigan, is where the whole community has gotten together and discussed it.
Communities are definitely different in Vancouver as well. Whereas Shawnigan's a much smaller area, kind of not as a diverse community, maybe a couple of views here and there. But with Vancouver, there's a lot of different little communities, bunch of people with different views. It's a very large city with a bunch of suburbs. So yeah, and districts. So a lot more change goes down there. Where Shawnigan's just a little district. I myself have lived in West Vancouver and North Vancouver. So those are both separate districts and kind of have their own little municipality thing and with different little laws here and there. But yeah, Vancouver is for sure a lot more immense and different and takes a lot of voices to be heard or make change happen.
Hayden, I have a question. What do you think is better, Shawnigan or Vancouver?
Well, I don't know. That's a tough question. Myself, I think, well, I like Vancouver more because partly because I think I've just grown up there and my whole life kind of revolves around it. But yeah, and I don't really like change that much. I don't know. Humans don't even like change that much.
True.
But so yeah, I do prefer. I would prefer
Also,
staying in
a
Vancouver.
city is nice because there's transit and stuff. Whereas
True.
Shawnigan, we don't have much BC
Yeah.
transit or Ubers or
Every
fast
well,
and
Uber's
food
not
places.
Uber's not in BC, but like whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
You
no.
get
That's
what I
true.
mean.
Shops,
Mhm.
malls, all this type of stuff in Vancouver is a lot different than on the
Yeah,
island.
true. But also, Shawnigan does get you away from the big city with the big lights and
True, it's a different
busy,
experience,
like,
and there's lakes and stuff.
yeah,
It's a lot
we got
nicer.
a lake
over here.
near us too.
That's true.
But I guess you guys have that river.
We do have Capilano River. Yeah, it's freezing
Mm,
cold though.
Yeah.
Not many swimming places in Vancouver, and the harbor is like truly gross. You can't really swim
Yeah,
there.
the harbor's gross.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think that concludes episode 2 of our
Yeah.
amazing podcast. So, yeah,
Mhm.
thank you for listening.